Good morning, I'm Miss Delta 9, and welcome back to our beautiful community where we explore consciousness, healing, and spirituality. Today I want to talk about Karl Young, the nervous system regulation, and the sacred journey back to our authentic self. So if today's message finds you, perhaps it isn't by accident. Perhaps you've spent years giving pieces of yourself away. Perhaps you've carried other people's burdens because you believed love meant sacrifice. Perhaps you've mistaken exhaustion for compassion. And if so, this message is for you. So before we begin, if these teachings resonate with your heart, I invite you to please subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who may need these words today. Together, we're building a community dedicated not to perfection, but to truth, to healing and awakening. Now take a slow, deep breath. Allow your shoulders to soften, and let's begin. There comes a moment in every authentic healing journey when something quietly changes inside of us. It's not dramatic. It's not fireworks. It's not announced from the universe, and no certificate comes declaring its arrival. Instead, one morning you just simply realize that your energy belongs to you again. You notice conversations no longer leave you emotionally depleted. You stop replaying interactions in your mind, perhaps. You no longer feel responsible for everyone else's emotions. You begin to understand something Karl Young spent much of his life's work pointing towards. Healing is not becoming someone new. Healing is remembering who you were before conditioning taught us otherwise. So for many years, I believed love meant endlessly giving. I believed compassion required self-sacrifice. I believed being a good person meant fixing someone who crossed my path. But eventually something inside me began to become exhausted, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and energetically, and that exhaustion became one of my greatest teachers. There are relationships that feed you, and there are relationships that feed on you. At first, this distinction can be very difficult to recognize because both relationships may begin with kindness. Both may begin with affection. Both may even begin with what feels like genuine connection. But over time, truth begins to reveal itself. Relationships that nourish your soul are built upon reciprocity. Both people give, both receive, both celebrate each other's growth. Neither person is expected to disappear so that the other can survive. So, energy moves in both directions. There would be respect, there would be freedom, there's honesty, there's a mutual accountability. But relationships that feed upon you slowly begin to feel differently. The giving becomes one-sided. The emotional labor becomes all yours. And your nervous system becomes responsible for maintaining everyone else's peace. You become a caretaker, the rescuer, the emotional regulator. Without even realizing it, your identity becomes built around everyone else's need while your own quietly disappears. Many people call this comparison, but often it's conditioning. Karl Young understood that what remains unconscious controls our lives until we finally become aware of it. And many of us were taught unhealthy love. We were taught survival. If love was conditional during childhood, if acceptance depended upon pleasing others, if conflict felt unsafe, then we learned to become whatever anyone else needed us to be. We learned to anticipate emotions. We learned to read the room. We learn to rescue and fix. We learn to overfunction. Not because we were weak, but because our nervous system was trying to keep us safe. But once protected, us eventually imprisons us. One of the greatest realizations of my own healing journey was recognizing that my desire to help everyone wasn't always coming from wisdom. Sometimes it was coming from avoidance. That realization humbled me. It was easier to focus on someone else's healing than to just sit quietly with my own unfinished grief. It was easier to rescue another than to rescue the abandoned parts within myself. It was easier for me to analyze other people's wounds than to acknowledge my own. And I believe many beautiful souls unknowingly do this. Helping can become another form of hiding, right? Service can become another way of avoiding intimacy with ourselves. Healing asks something different. Healing asks us to become honest with ourselves. So as I continue my own inner work, something remarkable happened. The compulsion to rescue slowly began to dissolve, not because I stopped caring, but because I began respecting another person's journey. Everyone has their own timing. Everyone has lessons that cannot be learned through someone else's intervention. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is just to allow another soul to experience the consequences that awaken them. That's not abandonment. This is trust. Trust that life itself is a profound teacher. Trust that every soul carries its own wisdom. We have to trust that transformation cannot be forced. We can only invite it. Now I give differently. Now I no longer give to earn love. I no longer give because guilt demands it. I no longer give because silence makes me uncomfortable. I give from overflow. I give because my own cup is full. I give because joy naturally wants to be expressed itself. And when my help isn't welcome, I release it with peace. That has become one of my greatest forms of freedom that I've ever known. This shift changes every relationship. You will begin to stop chasing. You stop convincing. You stop explaining repeatedly. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop proving your goodness. You simply just become yourself. And surprisingly, those who truly belong in your life will come closer. And those who benefited only from your self-abandonment will quietly drift away. That can feel painful, but it is also scary because every ending creates space for a relationship either to build on authenticity instead of obligation, and that is sacred. So Young believed that individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who we truly are required, takes tremendous courage. Why? Well, because authenticity often disappoints people who benefited from our inauthenticity. When you begin setting healthy boundaries, some people will accuse you of changing. They're right, you've changed. You've stopped betraying yourself, and that change is worth the celebration, not apologies. So as this first part comes to a close, I want to leave you with this reflection. Ask yourself, where in my life am I confusing self-sacrifice with love? Where am I giving from fear instead of freedom? Where have I abandoned myself in order to belong? Sit quietly with those questions. Don't rush the answers. Allow your own soul to speak, because the journey of individuation doesn't begin by chasing the world around you. It begins the moment you become honest with yourself. So in part 2, we'll explore how suffering becomes a sacred teacher and how the false self begins to dissolve, and why Karl Young believed that walking through our darkness is what ultimately reveals our light. Until then, remember, you were never meant to become someone else. You were always meant to become more fully yourself. I'm Star Delta 9. Thank you for spending your time with me today while we walk through this journey of gentle love and we deeply connect with one another to return to our true selves of who we have always been. Namaste.